Yeah, all right. So,
Excellent.
hi, Richard.
Hi, Catherine. How are
How's
you?
it going?
It's
I'm good.
good.
Yeah, yeah, you put
We're
the
a
kids
couple of
to
days
bed.
away from debut, and it's been a long process, but I'm glad we're finally here.
I know, right? And just for people who are watching at home, we've never met before. This is the first
Right.
time that we've actually spoken.
That's
A
right. We've
lot of
been
time.
emailing back and forth for like the past year.
Yeah,
Not towards the beginning of the process. I think for the first year, as you were illustrating, like there was very strict separation of author and illustrator. And towards the end of the process, I think you had mostly done most of the finals, but there were a couple of like questions about like just like details that we felt was necessary for us to talk. And I think that was good that Emily Feinberg let us email back and forth at that point. Because I think it's just good to be able to go directly to, your collaborators and get the details right, especially when we're doing something that's science-based.
yeah, and you want it to all be correct. And I'm
Right.
so glad that she sort of opened that door for us to be able to
Yeah.
talk more. And then since then, it's just been so much fun planning
Right.
our bookmarks and all of the debut
Yes.
stuff. And you have an event coming up, right?
Yeah, there's one on Tuesday. Actually, on launch day, I have an event at Books of Wonder, which is your old.
Yay.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
excited about that.
Yeah, Peter Glassman emailed me and asked if I would be there, and I said I am 37 weeks pregnant. That's not going to
Yes.
work out. And I'm
Right.
wearing Mars today.
Oh, that's awesome. Yes, I
To-
love that.
yeah,
That's fantastic.
to celebrate. My son is
Right.
dressed as Mars.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so we just got our author copies, and author
Yes.
copies are, you get like one copy when the book first gets off the boat from the press, but then
Right.
later they send you your 20 copies, and we haven't opened ours
Right.
yet. So
Yep. There we go. So this is
yeah,
the box. Ugh.
all right. Yeah, giant box.
Giant box. Yeah, this is heavier than I expected, but this is, I guess, what
Right?
it feels like.
Okay, let's do this. I've got
All
my
right.
utility knife.
Yes. And at this point, you've done this a couple of times. This is your fourth picture book, right?
Yeah, and then I had a couple of middle grade novels that I illustrated. The first time
Right.
I opened my author copies was actually with my UPS guy named Lenny. I subjected him. I was like, look, it's my first book. And he very kindly stood there and looked through neighborhood charts.
Somebody needs to be able to share the moment, I think. So.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, here we go. Big moment.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Oh my goodness.
Yay.
It's real. It's a real book.
It's real, and there's a whole bunch of them here.
That's amazing.
So exciting.
That's amazing. Tell me this never gets old.
It doesn't. It really doesn't. It's not quite like holding a child when it's born, I
Right.
think, but it's definitely, I think the anxiety drops.
Right.
But it's still just so exciting to see your baby.
For sure.
Yeah. And just, I don't know that everybody knows about the coolness of the cover.
Yes. Oh, I love the case cover. This is, yeah.
Yeah. So this is called the jacket, the dust jacket. And then this is called the case.
Right.
And usually publishers don't do two different things, but in this case.
Right. I just absolutely love the case. It's so curiosity, it just sort of encapsulates everything about it.
I'm so glad you like it. And I'm so glad that
it's
they
amazing.
did it. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when Emily sent me the first image of it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. It happens to be that most of the picture books in our house are jacketless. As soon as we remove the jacket, just because of the kids being the ages they are, like they tend to get in the way. So have a book with a great alternate case cover. It's so amazing.
Cool. Well, I love it too. I'm glad that you do as well. So yeah. How old are your sons again?
So our oldest is 5. He's about to be 6. He'll turn 6 in December. And our youngest is turning 4 actually on Tuesday, on pub day.
Oh, wow. Okay, so,
so
he's basically the same age as my son, Jackson. He's
right.
Yeah, 4 and 2 months. So
yes. So it's a great age because they're starting to really like get into the stories now. When they're younger, it's just like, okay, great pictures and the funny words. But like once they start understanding the story and being able to track things, like it's really a cool moment.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And my son loves this book and he loves space. So
yes, fantastic.
It's really exciting. Yeah. Well, do you want to, we've got questions for each other.
Yes, absolutely.
With 3 questions.
Right.
We thought people might be interested in learning more about our process from each side.
Yes, for sure.
I think I should start because you're the author and interview you. and my first question, of course, is how does it feel to hold your first picture book?
It's amazing. This is like, cliche to say it's a dream come true, but it kind of is. And it's sort of weird because like when I got the AREs, the advanced reader editions, to have it like to hold something like tactile like for the first time was really amazing. But as time goes on, and I don't know if you feel like this, but like it could be that I'm just sort of like if you're staring at something for so many months, and like it's been like 2 years now since like, you know, the whole process started, like it almost, when you see the final product, like it doesn't seem real. Like it almost seems like, okay, this is just something that I've been working on, but like it doesn't, I don't have that sense of finality yet, you know, holding the book. Like even now holding it, it's like, it's amazing and it's incredible, but it almost, I feel like separated from it in a way, like it's not mine. Like it's just another cool book that I got, you know? So it's,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's like unique to me or like most other authors. Like, how did you feel the first time you held your first book?
Well, I think it's a little different when you illustrate it, because you've seen like a secondary stage for longer, you know,
Right.
and you've been less removed from it. As the author, you turn it in and then you don't see it for a long time.
Right.
In your case, you're saying a couple of years,
Right.
2.5 years. And in this case, it's been a little more recent. I think I turned in the final art last summer, so it's been a year for me. But yeah, there is this distance because you don't recognize it as the thing you've been working on. The thing that you've been working on is just like in draft mode, you know,
Right.
with just words and scribbles. And so it's not the thing that you did, it's this other thing. And I think there's this period of adjustment of getting used to it.
For sure.
But then when it's out in the world and kids are reading it and you see it at a bookstore, and especially I'm so excited that you get to go to Books of Wonder. It's just such amazing. A wonderful place.
Right.
And doing any event there is always just fabulous. And having people line up and sign it, like that's really the moment where it's out in the world and it belongs to other people too. So that's so exciting.
Absolutely. I have here the binder of my printed manuscripts, just the Word docs, and Red Rover is the first one.
Cool.
And text. And it's funny because most of the time, you know, my alpha and beta readers are my kids. And so I've been reading like my stories to them for like 2 years now, just the text. And like, I keep saying like, when this is illustrated, like it'll be a lot more dynamic and stuff like that. And just to be able to show them like a fully realized vision is just really cool. So that aspect of it is really quite amazing.
Well,
like,
and to be able to share it with your kids and have them really
Right, exactly, yeah. But you know, everything that I've written so far, like other than Red Rover, it still exists just in text files, you know. So like, it's just a very interesting next step of the process to be able to show them that. So
cool.
Getting a crash course in book publishing, which is really, you know, I've been sort of learning along with them because I'm fairly new to it. So yeah, it's just been interesting to show them how everything is done and show them like sketches and final art and things like that. So it's just really kind of cool.
I think the process is different at every publisher, and it's obscure to anybody who's not in it. So everybody's learning as they go, because
for sure.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, I'm so excited to be a part of your first.
Absolutely. Book. I think, by the way, I lucked out with the illustrator lottery for sure. Get to be my first illustrator.
I love the story that you told that your friend was like that girl in that commercial, and you're like,
oh my gosh, it was. It's I mean, if I'm gonna have an illustrator, it might as well be somebody who's on TV. You know.
It was only for 5 weeks, and it was just a weird life experience, but fun.
Right.
I'm glad it happened. But
absolutely, yeah.
Such a funny small world.
Yes.
Okay, let's see here.
Do you want to go back and forth with the questions, or do you?
Sure.
Okay, so I think my first question to you was about the research, because I know you're a huge direct research person. Like, you like to travel and go and do extensive like in-person research. You went to like Kenya for your elephants book, and California for the sharks book. Mm-hmm. Obviously this was not an option for Mars. Although I love that tweet. I think you tweeted at Elon Musk to like,
not taking my calls.
I'm shocked that he didn't, you know, help us out there. But so like, how did you approach the research in this case?
Yeah, so I was a little concerned about that when I first talked to Emily and Simon about this manuscript. You know, I can't go to Mars, so how authentic can I be? But JPL and NASA and so many different online resources are available to let you see and watch what Curiosity does every day. You can, and for anybody who doesn't know, you can go to their websites and see what pictures she's taking every day. What kind of research she's doing every day. And so that level of engagement let me feel like I could be so much closer to it than the millions of miles away that it is. Yeah, I think that helped a lot. Also, before this book, I had done a book called Otis and Will Discover the Deep, the record-setting dive of the bathysphere by Barb Rosenstock. And in that book, it was set in 1930. So I couldn't time travel to 1930 to do that either, but there was this rich archive that I could visit, and I could go look at the illustrations that were made about the fish in that dive. And so I think the distance for Red Rover and the time distance for Otis and Will kind of are two different experiences, but I still was able to navigate doing some research that felt pretty hands-on.
Right. Right.
You know, it's great to be able to go and watch elephants in Kenya, and it's great to be able to go and watch sharks in California, but that's not realistic for most people to travel when they're doing nonfiction, and not realistic for many subject matters. So it was a really good exercise for me to think about, how can I put myself there, and how can I feel like I'm having a direct experience, and then try to put that into the art. What makes me feel the most, you know, watching movies, like, as ridiculous as they are, The Martian or Wall-E or something, and all that emotional connection, and the world building that they've done really helps you get in the mindset for thinking about being there. I haven't read the book yet.
One of my huge influences was
really, but
it's incredible. Right.
I mean, it's fun.
The movie, I'm sure, was great for visual reference, but the book is also fantastic. It's so nerdy and sciencey. It's great. There's a lot of math in it, which I don't understand, but it's
I'm glad to hear you say
more real.
Yeah. No,
for sure.
I have it. We have it. I just haven't read it yet. We found it at the library.
Right.
Yeah. So does that help answer the?
Yeah, absolutely. I was wondering if there was any thought of going to visit JPL in Pasadena. I think they are. Was that ever something that could have happened, or?
I didn't know how to go about doing that. I'm sure that I could have looked into it, but there's the wall up around the institution seems a lot higher than like reading about an animal and like looking at the header on the research paper and saying, okay, there's the 5 guys I can email. But it wouldn't have been that far to go. But
I'm not sure how much it would have gotten you beyond what you can see online, though.
Yeah, and I think, as not being the author, I would have a little less authority maybe to approach them, and also not want to step on your toes, you know, not knowing you yet. So I think that if I were doing the project by myself, it might have been a little bit different, but I think that I don't know, it just seemed like you've provided the framework, and there's a lot of resources online, and so let's start there.
Awesome. Very cool. All right.
Let's see. Question 2 for you. This is your first picture book, but it's certainly not the first time that you've been a professional writer. You've been science writing for a long time, from what I understand. So what made you decide to shift into children's books?
Yeah, so I started out actually after college as a journalist. So in one way or another, I'd always written for like either younger audiences or for like sort of a creative audience. So my first job was writing for a magazine that covered comic books and video games and movies. That was sort of like a really fantastic post-college job. Did that for a couple of years, and then I shifted over to a magazine that covers advertising, the creative side of advertising. So that was also cool because I got to talk to a lot of like copywriters and art directors and things like that who like make commercials. So in both of those jobs, I sort of got a sense of what what creative people do and how they operate. And I'd always been fascinated by it, but I never thought that I could do it myself. Like the idea of creative writing was sort of like a very scary thing for me, and I never really tried it. And then I switched to my current job at BrainPop, which is an educational company. We make animated videos for kids, essentially. So
yeah, sure, I've heard of BrainPop.
Yeah. So I started off as a scriptwriter for them, writing the videos. And in recent years, I've shifted more to editing. But I'd always that was a great sort of combination of things for me, because it was creative writing, which I'd never done before. But it was also education, which I loved, and writing specifically for an audience for kids. So I really got good training in that area through the job. And so a couple of years ago, when we had our first son, okay, one second. I think the internet is a little bit shaky here. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. So when our first son was born, we started getting a lot of these kids books and started reading them over and over and over again. And I really got into them like as an art form. You know, like when you're a kid, you read them and they're great stories, and like they open up all these worlds for you, but you don't really look at it as a piece of art necessarily. So it was the first time that I was looking at it as an adult and sort of like analyzing the form and figuring out how it works. And I got really fascinated by it. And at the time we had a pet hedgehog, and I showed pictures of this hedgehog to my coworkers. And one of my coworkers at BrainPop is actually a children's book illustrator herself. And she was like, you have to write a book about this guy, you know, like, I was like, never thought about that before, but why not? You know, I write for kids anyway. Might as well give it a shot. So I started doing a lot of research online about how to write a picture book manuscript and like, you know, the formatting, and did a lot of studying. And then I just decided, might as well just try this. And I wrote that first manuscript, and it's terrible. And it went through like a billion drafts, and it still haven't really cracked it yet. But like, that was my first try at it. And
Cool.
yeah, and then I started writing other stories, and I just sort of built up like a backlog of stories that I really liked. And I felt, at a certain point, I felt comfortable querying agents and going about like that process, like officially starting the process. So yeah, that's how it started. It was just sort of inspiration from my kids, and really wanting to get into this thing that I had been reintroduced to, you know, as an adult.
Do you see yourself doing both still? Continuing to be editing at BrainPop and then?
Yeah, I think so,
Yeah.
because it's, you know, as you know, like doing picture books is not really, it's hard to make a living just solely on that. You know, it's, I would love to. I think that would be the dream, to be able to do that full time. But yeah, I think BrainPop it's been so great to me, you know, this job. And I've been there for 12 years now.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, so there's really no reason for me to leave. You know, I definitely have the ability to do the picture books on the side.
Yeah.
It's hard, you know, it's getting harder and harder as the kids grow older too. There's just not a lot of time, you know, outside of work and family stuff. But you know, I do most of my writing on the train. I have an hour commute both ways, so that's my writing time. And then after bedtime, at least once a week, I try to make it to the Starbucks here, the local Starbucks, to really sit down for like 2 or 3 hours and knock out some writing. That's pretty much it. I mean, like, thankfully with picture books, you can do it in a way that, like, it's not like a novel where you need a sustained burst of like 6 months to a year of like solid writing, and you're like stuck in this world for that amount of time. Like with picture
Yeah.
books, I can jump back and forth between manuscripts. I can like, it's a lot more like digestible, I think, in a way, as an author.
And forgiving, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
if I put aside a manuscript for a while, I don't feel terrible about it, because it's not like as much of an investment in time. So yeah, I think it's something that I definitely want to do both for as long as I can. If things go well enough that I can do picture books full time, that means things are, you know, that's the dream. But I'm not planning on that right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. You have to have a sort of snowball of lots of
Yeah,
manuscripts that are
right,
paying out royalties and stuff. But yeah.
right, right,
Cool. Cool. Well, that's exciting that you got to take all of this that you've learned and then bring it
right.
into this world. And they seem
Absolutely.
to cross pollinate really well. So that's really
Yes,
cool.
yes, for
Yeah.
sure. Okay, second question for you.
Mhm.
So I was really curious about, I'm always curious about art palettes when it comes to books like this. As an illustrator, did you feel at all constrained by the fact that this is the red planet and like everything seems to be like pretty monotone? I mean, if you look at the final art, it's not that way at all. There's so many brilliant hues of like oranges and reds and even some blues in there. And like, how did you approach that? Was that something that worried you when you first thought about doing this?
I think maybe at the very beginning, I was like, oh gosh, this is all one color. And I have some little tiny sketches here. I think these are printouts from working on my iPad. And you
Mm.
can see that they're
Oh,
just a
cool.
lot of yellow. And I had taken your manuscript and printed it out and just stuck these to like little images. And, you know, I thought for a while the RED would be panels or something.
Right.
So I had, you know, a lot of this going on.
Mm.
But then I started doing these night scenes too, that had a lot of
Wow.
blues. And I was looking at Pixar color scripts, they're called. I have this Pixar book that I love and I've beaten up entirely.
Cool.
And they have these pages of color scripts that are just different palettes that they're playing with for these different
Right.
movies. And
That's
I
amazing.
loved, you know, I started saying, okay, like I love that. I love the purples and the oranges and the reds. And I love this cerulean blue back here. And, you know, on the color wheel, blue and orange are opposite and green and red are opposite. So what's a good kind of blue-green that would be good for using in between, like as a contrast color. So this is
Mm.
one of the first color palettes that I did for this book.
Wow.
And I was really happy, particularly with this one, which
Right.
ended up in the final book, basically.
Mm.
You know, and here's like trying out some different palettes for the visiting friends. And this is like where she's going up the mountain and she's about to hit the dust storm. And this is the dust storm. So I was just kind of playing with all these different colors and really liking how the blue and red and orange fit together.
Right.
So let's see here. If I've got any other good little sketches to show. So the colors that I used a lot of aquarelle paints, which are these little paints. This is a Prussian green, which I totally destroyed doing this book. Cerulean blue. And then I had a lot of cadmiums and alizarin reds. And then this neutral tint, which is sort of a gray color. And so if you look at like the first title spread where we've got the rocket taking off, we've got almost all of those colors in this spread here.
Yes.
So the neutral tints and the blues and greens. And I just think it makes, when you've got a cool color next to a warm color, it makes everything pop more, it makes it more vibrant, makes it have more dynamism. So I just, as I was playing more and more with the palette, I really loved the way the two things were working together. And this page was the first page that I painted, and I didn't Photoshop this. It's really blue to yellow to orange, and I was really proud of myself the way that it came out, because I didn't know how it would come out at all. And so seeing this transition work from the blue to the orange really made me feel more confident about getting a little more risky with putting blues into the shadows, as on, you know, this page, just like going ahead and letting there be some blue accents, which I think I was playing around in Photoshop, and I had a layer that came through that was blue or something in those spots. I was like, oh, that looks good. I'm just gonna paint that. Like,
go with it.
Yeah. So it sort of naturally came together in that way. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. I think that spread you showed of sort of like drilling into the rock was the first one that I noticed, the blues. And I was like, wow, that looks amazing. And you expected that.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, did you envision it as being all red, or how did you?
I guess I did. Yeah. You know, there's the images that you see on the NASA website and the JPL website are basically all either, I mean, well, first of all, a lot of that is like false color, like they add the color afterwards. There are, like, recently there were some images that had some blues in them as they were discovering like water and ice and things like that. But like for the most part, it's all like, you know, pretty much all red. And it's, that's sort of what I was envisioning. Like I never really had too much of a strong vision of what things would look like, because I sort of don't want to go down that road. Like I visualize like very basically, like I don't really do details as I'm thinking, like imagining the stories as I'm writing them. Because I really like the idea of like each illustrator bringing like something else to the table and like and really fleshing it out and bringing it to life. So like I almost don't want to do too much of that, like have a preformed image, because then it's going to be like, oh, okay, so that's not what I thought of, and like that's you know, so but I think it turned out really well.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm pleased with it, and I'm glad that the experiment sort of worked, because you just, I mean, I haven't been doing this for so long that I feel confident that it's going to work. It's all just an experiment, you know?
Right.
So, the other thing that when they do drill on Mars, it does look sort of blue, and I guess it's hard to tell what it actually looks like, because you're right, they are color correcting, but it hasn't oxidized yet, and so there is that sort of shocking aqua color when they drill versus the redness of the planet. And
it's one of many tidbits that we discovered over the course of doing the research.
Yeah. And the other thing that you said, how they change the color, how they add color or color correct. We don't really know if that's right either. And so that gives you some room to play, you know?
Absolutely. Cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, thanks. So last question for you. You touched on this a little bit, but I want to ask you where the voice came from.
Yes.
For this and why you, spoiler alert, to have Mars be the narrator, which is this like interesting, unexpected twist towards the end.
Right. I definitely wanted some sort of twist at the end. I wasn't sure exactly what it was yet. In fact, there was an early version of this as I was planning it out. There were basically two different tracks I was following. There was this version, which was sort of following Curiosity from I wasn't sure who the narrator was going to be yet, but just following Curiosity from above. And then there was another track that I was playing with. I never fully wrote this, but it was going to be more of a Red Rover, like the game. Like it would be a call, like back and forth calling, like Red Rover, send Curiosity over. You know, it would be like Earth and Mars talking to each other. I never actually wrote that version because I felt like it was too, almost too easy. You know, like to take an existing like game and song and sort of like build on top of it. So I thought the other way was going to be more of a challenge. And when it came down to it, like I knew that I didn't want Curiosity to be the narrator. I played with the version where she was, but it just felt like so much of what makes curiosity appealing is sort of this like earnest, like almost like dog-like quality, like, you know, it's
Mm-hmm.
like sort of like this puppy just running around like exploring Mars. And to put the voice in her voice would have been almost too silly. I think it would have been like, oh, you know, rocks and water and I'm thirsty, you know, like it just didn't seem to work. So I wanted more of like something with more gravitas, I guess. But I didn't want it to be just sort of like this omniscient, like third person narrator, like, you know, because I felt like that would be too far removed. So I thought about like what appealed to me about this idea of following this rover, this like solitary rover on this journey across the landscape. And I thought, you know, there's a sense of wonder there. There's a sense of just sort of like existential, like, oh my gosh, like the vastness of everything. And it really felt to me at a certain point that Mars itself would be the best analog for that, you know, for, you know, like looking down at something and sort of observing it and making all these conclusions about what it's doing without necessarily being correct. You know, like it doesn't know fully what curiosity is or what she's doing. But I think that's kind of cool because in some ways that mirrors what a child reading this book or like learning about curiosity is also doing, like asking questions, coming up with some conclusions that are wrong, but like, you know, going through the process of asking the questions. And I thought that was really cool. And it made it different. So like that's sort of, I forget exactly when I came up with that. I'm sure it was like a eureka moment that was like, oh my gosh, I got to do this. And I did it. So.
Well, it's a cool choice and an unexpected choice. And it works really well because that's a really good point. Like Mars doesn't know exactly what she's doing and neither do I. You know, you read about all these different instruments on this rover and I've tried really hard, but I just don't
really
understand
overwhelming.
what all of them do and how they work and the sampling data. And it's nice to be like, I don't need to understand all of it to still be able to draw this. And Mars doesn't either, but perceives it as a presence and a friend. And that's a really, I like that a lot. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And sort of on that note, my last question to you is, Mars and Curiosity are like the two main characters of the story. So push comes to shove, who did you enjoy illustrating more?
I mean, it's such a tough question because Curiosity obviously has so much personality, but I did love bringing out the landscape and the textures and the environment. If I had to say, I'd say Curiosity, but they complement each other so well. It's this lovely relationship there that's present between them. And so, yeah, it was two different kinds of challenges. One was trying to make something that's very mechanical and very real, you know, that has a real shape. It's not a bendy animated character. It basically is a big rolling truck robot thing. How do you make that feel really alive and solid, but still have some personality? And then with Mars, going off of what places I knew actually existed along her path and looking at reference photos of those, but then also letting it be a little bit more dreamlike, following her experience. How do I make those two things work together? And they had very different, I don't know, drawing Mars is more forgiving because it's more atmospheric and dreamy, and then Curiosity has to be very specific but still have a personality. So different challenges. But I think ultimately it was really fun playing with Curiosity and her experience and emotions there. And I guess drawing Mars lets Curiosity have emotion more, you know, it's like the way the dust interacts with her and the big storm and the different colors that I can use, like that sort of shows what she's feeling. You know, if she's in this big open landscape, then she's lonely, and if she's looking up, she's talking. And so the two played off each other really well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Those are all the questions I had.
Well, as you said, I have more questions too, but I'm sure that we can talk more about this again. And I know that we're both really excited for this book to come out in just a couple days. So thanks, Richard. Talk to you soon.
Bye. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.